right. Hello, everyone. I see everyone's just connecting and joining in here. We're excited to have you with us. Welcome to Whiskeys of the World, to wow them at home. And I assume you already have your samples in front of you, but if not, it's a good time to get the mat out, get your glass ready, a spit cup if you're going to go that route. I'm going to, so I can stay lucid for this session. But if you're fully imbibing too, l'chaim and enjoy. But also water. I always recommend get plenty of water and have a good glass, both to cleanse your palate in between and to just stay hydrated. But we'll start in just a minute. We'll let you all kind of get settled in, but yeah, feel free to get everything set up as we're getting started. And also, if you could just drop in the chat once you have a moment, drop in the chat where you're calling in from. I think already those of us that are presenting and are here are from all over, so I'm sure you are too. So there we go. All right, we got LA in the house. Napa, close to home for me here in San Francisco, Vero Beach, Florida, Millbrae, Greenbrae, a lot of Marin. Hey, Marin. Okay, we've got one person, Felix, there that maybe needs some assistance there in the chat. We got Syracuse, New York as well. Great. Okay, perfect. And then I know a few of us who are speaking here as well are from Chicago, so Pompano Beach, Florida. So we've definitely got East Coast, West Coast, and Central all in the mix here. All right, Milwaukee, right on. All right. I have some friends, speaking of Syracuse, I have some friends flying in from New York tonight, from upstate, and they were just showing me snow. So I said, oh, good, get on over here. There's sun and no snow. Oh, great. We've got Boston, Covington, Georgia. Great. We really do have a good cross section here. I love it. I grew up all over the country myself in 4 states. Yeah, Kansas City, Oklahoma, New Jersey, just outside of New York City, LA, and then San Francisco for much of my adult life. But I see. Thanks, Charles. Not too much snow, not too much snow in Syracuse. Yeah, my friend's in Buffalo, so they're coming out from Buffalo, so it's always pretty cold up there. All right. Well, we can go ahead and get started if everyone's ready, and I assume we might have a few more people kind of joining in as we go. But yeah, this is a great group. It's wonderful to see everybody from all over. See whiskey lovers from all over. And also I'm excited to kind of talk on the theme of women in whiskey as well, and being a woman in whiskey and spirits for a long time myself, a good 15 years. This subject is near and dear and personal to me. But we'll get into that in just a second. So like I said, and I still see more people jumping in. Hi, Felix. Hi, Rich. So we're excited that you're all together tonight or in the afternoon for those of us here on the West Coast to enjoy some whiskeys together. And if you've never been to a live WOW event, let us know in the chat if it's your first time. And I assume some of you might be back again for another one. As you know, we have completely different whiskeys every time, and a good range from across the world. I've led a few of these before, and it's always amazing to sit and taste and talk Japan, Ireland, Scotland, across the states in one sitting and beyond. So we've got a fun cross section again here tonight. Nice. Rich says he's a serial offender of WOW tastings. So awesome. Beautiful. Welcome back. Great to see that. But yeah, we do have the 2022 what year is it? 2022. Let's start over again. The tour is kicking in for Whiskeys of the World. So June is coming in DC. So would love to see you all in person. Anyone who can make it out to DC. It's at whiskiesoftheworld.com. Of course, the events here in San Francisco are always epic, but yeah, stay tuned. We'd love to see you at any of them. Check in at the site and come join us in person. All the guests are going to be muted, just to keep sound clean and all that good stuff. But we really want to engage with you. I would love to hear from you. So jump in on that chat, and please, I'll take your comments, your questions, your jokes, whatever you want. Please jump in and engage. We do have 3 amazing guests with us today that are going to talk about and represent and work with and/or founded 3 of the whiskeys that we're going to be drinking. And but I'm looking forward to engaging and talking about all of them with you. And we do ask that comments and questions and jokes are all respectful, and making it a great experience for everyone. And any violators might need to be kind of pulled off chat, so we can keep that happy space. And then probably the best thing to do to get the most out of the view is to change to speaker view instead of gallery. I love seeing gallery because I can see all of you who are on screen, but as we have different speakers, the speaker gallery will help you be able to kind of to jump through and hear all of our wonderful guests we have today as well. And again, please put those questions in. And when we have those guests, make sure if you have a question specifically for them, that you put that in while we're chatting, so they can see your question. And this is being recorded. This tasting is being recorded for all those who have the kit and are going to jump in later who weren't able to join us live. And as I mentioned before, make sure you have that drinking water, palate cleanser, and keep yourself hydrated. Like I said, as for me, I have a spit cup as well. I'm going to stay focused here. But also, if you would like to get any of the bottles we have tonight, there's a promo code. So it's Cheers15, and it'll give you 15% off. Actually, that's for, sorry, I was seeing that was for the bottles. That's actually for the upcoming virtual speakeasy, which is World Whiskey Day on May 25th. So there'll be another special tasting. Details will be in the chat there. Yep, thanks. Those are already there. And yeah, I think it's time to officially introduce myself. And we'll get started on tasting and kind of how to taste and do that in just a moment. But I am Virginia Miller, and I am in San Francisco. I am a longtime dining and drink writer and critic. Started out as a restaurant critic, still am, but fell in love with drink early on, especially spirits and cocktails. It started with cocktails. And pretty soon I started asking, what was in that spirit that you're trying to play off of in that cocktail? And this was a good 20 years ago. So I have, as a writer, 15 years professionally on food and drink. I have written about the cocktail renaissance and written about spirits, the cocktail renaissance as it's happened across the world, and watched it happen, but also watched spirits greatly change and more people get engaged all over the world. I've kind of watched, written, cataloged, visited distilleries around the world, but watched the craft distilling renaissance happen and been able to write about and catalog that as it's happened. So it's a deep passion and joy. I have visited just about every spirits category you can think of, key regions in the world and beyond. So I've certainly visited distilleries and everything from gin to eau de vie. I'm making a tequila with a major producer in Mexico. I'm very involved and love all spirits, but whiskey was probably my first love, honestly. And I have been to distilleries in just about every category of whiskey, certainly in Japan, Scotland, Ireland, across the US, but also Taiwan and a number of more remote places for whiskey around the world. So as you know, there's so many countries making incredible whiskeys. So it's a deep love. And then I'm also a judge in spirit, actually in dining spirits and cocktails as well. Been a long time judge in all of that, Tales of the Cocktail and all that for over a decade. World's 50 Best, chairperson So judge in bars and restaurants and all that fun stuff as well. But spirits, I am a hardcore spirits judge and lover for 11 years here. So I judge for SF World Spirits and IWSC in London and all kinds of different competitions around the world, and whiskeys of the world as well. I have been a judge for a number of years for that competition. So it's always blind. So actually the fun part is when we talk about tasting notes here, I will talk a little bit about maybe some of the techniques I use a little bit when I'm sitting there tasting, sometimes for 9 hours a day, tasting spirits. So we'll get into that in just a minute. And yeah, see a couple more people have joined in. Becky, hello, welcome everybody. People have been putting where they're calling in from in the chat if you haven't already done that. But anyway, the next thing we'll go on to, and I'm assuming, you know, this is a whiskey aficionado crowd. So I'm sure you know what whiskey is, but just for a quick overview, if we have anybody that's kind of just getting into it, I'm going to give the quick 1-minute spiel. But basically, whiskey is made from fermented grain, and it is distilled and matured or aged in oak casks, unless it's a white unaged whiskey, then it's not aged. But the main ingredients: water, grain, yeast. These are the key ingredients. And of course, the grain varies. As you know, this is the thing that can be the key difference: bourbon, rye, barley, wheat. And then there's plenty of experimental whiskeys as well, made from spelt and all kinds of other grains. Distillation typically happens in a pot or column still. And then depending on the countries, although these things are changing a lot, it can be double distilled, historically Ireland triple distilled, but there's a lot of distillers in Ireland now doing double distillation as well. And then there's the aging and the barrels. And of course, there's so many different types of barrels as well. We kind of run from, of course, one of the most common being our American oak and those barrels, but sherry, very coveted sherry barrels, and all those Mizunara casks from Japan, all those different types of barrels for aging. So as mentioned on the tasting notes, this is something I do just so much of. I do write, one of my columns is a spirit column as well. So I get samples every day, and I'll sit sometimes and taste 10 things in a row. And some of the things I do, one of the key things I do is water, of course, as I mentioned, rinse between every sip. So I would encourage that you do a little rinse between each whiskey, because they all are going to taste quite different, and you want to pick the nuances out. But also, we would encourage you to just pour like a small amount initially. So maybe just kind of, just get like a quarter of your bottle in there, and you can come back, do more if you need to, but just kind of start out with a quarter, just enough that you can nose it and get a little action in there, but not so much that you're drinking a full little bottle before you move on to the next 9. This way, if you just pour a little, you can kind of pace yourself and then come back to favorites or come back and discuss. But nosing is very much encouraged. It's a little different than wine in that, normally with wine, you're going to just get your nose right on in there, but because of the higher proof of spirits, it can often kind of burn or singe. You can feel that burn on your nose hairs there. So it can really help to kind of come in a little gently, come in on the sides, top, bottom. Some people even do. There's not one total right way to do it. I've seen different experts do different ways, but you want to come at it a little more gentle with the spirit on the nose. But the nose is at least half of taste, and so much of what you're getting is going to be on the nose as well. So it's really important to nose. I say nose first, give it a couple good rounds, and then you taste. In my case, spit to go the distance here. And then you go back and nose again and go for a second round. So we'll kind of do that together as we go through each one, but that's usually one of my techniques there as well. And again, with these, if you pour just about the quarter, it'll be equivalent of about 2 drinks in 1 hour by the time you go through 10 samples. So that'll be nice and reasonable, hopefully. Just enough to party, and but enough to be still standing at the end, and then you can go back to favorites. All right. So with all that, I think we are ready to dive in with our sample one, and we have a very exciting one to start with. And I just want to give you all a moment to pour. If you haven't, make sure you pour sample one. And actually, our first guest, Chastity, I'm going to have her introduce herself and talk about the amazing brand she works for, Uncle Nearest Premium Whiskey. But we did just have the founder, Fawn, had just spoke at the American Distilling Institute conference earlier. I want to say it's earlier this year, towards the end of last year. And I was so inspired. It was just she is a powerful speaker and a powerful woman and an incredible representation of women in whiskey. I mean, just one of the best there is. So I'm excited to have this brand to start us off, because if you've been hearing about it, if you pay attention to whiskey, it's sweeping awards. If I believe right, Doug, if you're there, we had some serious placement in our whiskeys of the world as well. But I've just seen it continue to sweep blind tastings, and people are just loving it, reading about it, critics are raving about it, all the things. So without further ado, Chastity Beasley, calling in from Chicago. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Virginia. Thank you for having me here tonight. Hello, everybody. Good evening. My name is Chastity Beasley. I'm the Illinois brand steward for Uncle Nearest Whiskey. If you're not familiar with Uncle Nearest Whiskey, like Virginia was saying, we've gotten so many awards since we launched in 2018. We are the most awarded whiskey of 2019, 2020, 2021, and soon to be 2022. We just received some awards a couple of weeks ago for Double Gold. So we're super honored to be able to continue cementing the legacy of Nearest Green. And if you don't know who he was the first African-American master distiller on record. We call him the godfather of Tennessee whiskey because without his contribution, there would not be a Tennessee whiskey category. He is the man that taught and mentored Jack Daniel. So lots of great history behind our brand. We launched in 2018. And since then, we have been the fastest growing independent American whiskey brand in history. So lots to celebrate. Our master blender, Victoria Butler, just recently won another Master Blender of the Year award. So that's a total of 4. And so it's just super exciting. I could literally sit here and go on and on about all the amazing things that are happening in our company. But let's taste some whiskey, shall we? And if you have any questions, please type them in the comments and I'll answer your question for you. So what you have in front of you is our small batch, 1884 small batch. This is quickly becoming our flagship expression. It is a new bottle. If you previously had this bottle maybe a year ago, it's different than what's in the bottle today. We were previously sourcing our whiskey, but now we're making our whiskey at our distillery in Shelbyville, Tennessee. So if you have this bottle at home, or the tasting that you're about to taste right now is our new whiskey made at our distillery. It is 93 proof and aged for 4 years. And I think it is quite impressive for a 4-year-old whiskey. I hope you all think the same. So let's just go ahead and give it a nose. And immediately I get honey, some brown sugar, get some ginger, some orange peel. Smells delicious. What are you all thinking of that smell? What are you all getting? You know, everyone gets different things. I get some white pepper on the finish.
Yeah, and the cherry for sure. I get that cherry right away. Mm. And I also love the elegance of it. It's, some whiskeys are really harsh on the nose and you really get that hot harshness, and this comes on just soft and elegant, comes on one blanket.
It's very soft and elegant. Thank you for that. It is. Let's taste it. And we know that first sip is just going to kind of Lay on our palate. I'm swallowing. You don't have to swallow. Virginia's spitting. But I get on the palate. I'm going to go again. Caramel. I immediately get caramel. Some spicy wood tannins right on the tip of my tongue. It's very smooth. And we say we're the smoothest whiskey in Tennessee. That warmth that you feel, we call that a Tennessee hug. So we don't say a burn, we say a warm Tennessee hug. You definitely get that proof.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to add a little splash of water to it, it's going to definitely open that whiskey up for you.
Yeah, and I was
some more characteristics. It has a very
have your nice little droppers in your kit, so that's there for you if you want to add a drop of water.
That finish is long. It lingers. Like as I'm talking, I can still feel it here, and I get like oakiness and some chocolate. The maple definitely comes through from our charcoal maple filtration. Let's see if we have any questions down here.
Yeah, we got a great comment.
Yeah, Rich Miller. Yeah, 4-year-old, elegant. Yes, 4-year-old whiskey. So we're super excited about having this in the market now. 1884 is the year that Uncle Nearest essentially put his last whiskey in a barrel. So when he retired, that's the connection there. If you hear my dog in the background barking, he says he likes Uncle Nearest too.
And Chastity, can we talk about the mash bill on this?
Sure. So we have a high corn, 86% corn, and then malted barley and rye. Makes
nice.
Because
I get a touch of that rye spice on the finish. So I was wondering
exactly
what the percentage was there.
It's low, but it definitely shows up.
It's present. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, one of my pet peeves when judging whiskey, and especially sometimes the younger ones, is you just get that too tannic, sometimes like licking a stave. It's so woody that it just strips your mouth. And these are really balanced tannins.
Yeah.
Important on that finish.
Or sometimes with young whiskeys, you get, well, for me, the corn is very, very prominent and it's not smooth. But right. In this expression, it's very balanced for it to be such a young whiskey.
Absolutely.
So we're super proud of this one. What do you all think about it? David says it's so rich and round for 4 years old. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Ellen says delicious.
Yeah. So if you all are fans of the whiskey, thank you for your support. Without your support, we wouldn't be the fastest growing American whiskey brand in history. Please look out for our premium 1856, which should be hitting the market this summer, as well as 2 ryes and another single barrel. So lots of exciting things happening. Our distillery is open for tours. You can visit our website and book your tour at unclenearest.com, and we would love to have you.
That's wonderful. I would love to come visit. Let's all go, right? Let's do it.
Hey, well, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful distillery.
Yeah, I bet. I was going to say, is it on grounds? Is it on, like, what does the estate look like?
So the distillery is on a walking horse farm.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so there's still horse stables there. Fawn's husband, Keith Weaver, one of his horses just had a baby. They call him Fawns, right? They call him Fawns, or is that a deer? I'm not sure. Anyway, so it's on a walking horse farm. There's a tasting room. There's a large gift shop. There's a bar and restaurant. They're currently building out a music venue for country music artists. Amazing. It's a huge piece of land, and it's absolutely gorgeous. Fawn is normally there on Saturdays. So if you get a chance to book a tour, book on a Saturday because she'll be there.
Oh, amazing. Yeah. And she's dynamic, amazing woman. Yeah. And
Yeah, she's pretty amazing.
Christine says she was there. They did their distillery tour of Tennessee, but missed Uncle Nearest. Just got there too late, and the area is really pretty. Yeah. So Christine, yeah, you'll have to go next time. First stop, right, on a Saturday.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, well,
Very
Chastity,
nice.
thank you. This is fabulous. And if the rest of you have any other questions, oh, and Doug here with yeah, with Whiskeys of the World makes an important comment about 4 years. It is a good age for bourbon, and it is a good age for American producers, because you often see a lot of our producers, for understandable reasons, need to put things out younger. But as Doug says here, the fact that they waited that long to release shows they aren't cutting any corners. Quality brand. Yeah, and it really is. It's true. 4 years is a nice
It does. Thank
you.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Can't wait to taste the 1856.
Yeah, there we go. Well, thank you so much, Chastity. We appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, cheers. Well, that's a great way to start. That's for sure. We definitely kicked off with a bang. And an elegant bang, which is really nice, actually. Sometimes when I'm judging spirits at 9 in the morning, you get something really harsh right off the bat, and you're like, "Ooh, did not want to wake up to that." But I would not be saying that. All right. Well, let's go ahead. Cheers. Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and jump into number 2. We're going to give you a second to prepare your next sample. So maybe a little quick rinse, a little water. And we're going to jump into bottle number 2. And again, please jump in with your questions, any thoughts, and certainly any comments or tasting notes or what you think about it. But we're going to jump in with Bardstown Fusion Series number 7. That is going to be our second taste here. And of course, Bardstown being in Kentucky and being honestly a magical town. It really is such a beautiful area. And this Bardstown Bourbon Company does all kinds of interesting things. They have a custom distilling program. They make all kinds of things for people. I've tried samples over the years that they'll do unique mash bills that they create for a bunch of brands. And that's all kind of on their site. You can see probably some brands that you know and love and have drunk over the years, like High West, Belle Meade, Hirsch, James E. Pepper, Cyrus Noble. They've been involved in producing mash bills for all of those brands. And so they have kind of a team of master distillers that work on all that. So it's something you've tasted, even if you haven't known you have. But you probably, unless you've kind of followed their fusion series, probably haven't tasted this fusion series. I haven't actually tasted this particular bottle yet. I've tasted other ones. But what their fusion series is they blend old and new bourbons together to try to create kind of something unique and different. And this fusion series number 7 right now, let's see, I got the mash bill notes here. This one is a blend. Goodness, I'm not even going to read all these off because that's how intricate it is, but it is all Kentucky whiskeys ranging from 3 years to 12 years. So, and then they have, like, for example, they'll have 54% of a 3-year that is corn, rye, and malted barley. And then they'll have 10% of a 12-year that is corn, rye, and malted barley. So you've got all these different percentages and intricate mixes they're kind of going for to get just the right taste profile. But basically, it's got corn, rye, malted barley, and one of the 3 years in here has a little wheat as well, just a touch of wheat. So let's go ahead and taste that. Get our pour going, kind of nose it first. See what you're getting. Right away, I get those kind of honey toffee notes, that sweetness on the nose. And definitely a little vanilla and oak, you know, the vanillins from the oak. Anybody else? I'm going to keep an eye out in the comments here. Feel free to jump in with anything you're getting. Oh, there's the cherry as I keep nosing it. And it's definitely, yeah, much more of that black cherry note as you see kind of in the tasting notes there. But yeah, take a sip as you're ready. Yeah, thanks, Chastity. Chastity's liking this one. David Stewart says sweets are all there, but not cloying like some corn whiskey to me. Rich toffee, honey, black cherry, a little drying on the palate. Nice. Yeah, same thing. That's back. I'm definitely getting that on the finish. It's back to those tannins again, but they're not overpowering. They're yeah, like I said earlier, I've had whiskeys where it's like I'm licking a stave or wood. And this is not like that. It's drying at the end, but it's not overly tannic. And a little nutty too. There's a little nut and cherry on that finish. I always say it's really crucial to go back for that second sip. In judging, I always do when I'm doing blind, I'll go at least 3 sips through each round. And I'll come back and nose because you start to pick up different things every time as you go. So just kind of go back for more, dive in a little bit. I get way more cherry that second round. I don't know about any of you, but yeah, it's almost making me think. It's not so much that I'm getting chocolatey notes, but it's such a black, dark cherry that it's almost making me think of like a Black Forest cake or something with like chocolate cherry. It's got those kind of notes a little bit. But anybody else? Any thoughts on that? Any questions? We can ask favorites as we start to go along if you have things that you're really feeling drawn to. But of course, we're going such a wide range of styles today. You know, I'm sure we have the gamut here of American whiskey lovers, Scotch lovers, all of the above. I always say anything good is what I love. I love whiskeys in every category. And we have French single malt here today too, which is also great. All right. So I think we're going to get ready to jump into number 3. And this is Catoctin Creek, the Roundstone Cask Proof. And we have a special guest here as well for this one. But I'm going to give you all just a second to prep your bottles, cleanse your palates, and get ready for bottle number 3. And this one, we are going to jump up in the ABV. So just note that as well as you're sipping. This is 58% and coming from Virginia. But I am going to let our special guest tell us the details because he knows best. We have Dean Kaplan here, who I understand is from Chicago, but Catoctin Creek is in Virginia. And welcome, Dean. So glad you're here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we are the Virginia Rye Whiskey. And when we talk mash bill on this one, it doesn't get any more easy to remember. It's 100% unmalted rye. And we focus on rye whiskey because, you know, as much as our friends over in Kentucky want to take credit for American whiskey these days, the history of American whiskey starts in Virginia, and it starts with rye whiskey. So Becky Harris, who is our president and chief distiller, is truly the one who makes this work. She is president of the American Craft Spirits Association, and in fact was just elected to her 2nd term. She's the first woman to sit in that position, and we're super excited that she gets another shot at it. So we focus on traditional whiskey making, copper pot still distillation done by hand. What you'll be tasting today was done in our 300-gallon copper pot still. Just last August, we completed $1 million expansion to get this new bad boy behind me, new 600-gallon copper pot still online. But we try to do everything as traditionally as possible. So what you have is our Roundstone Cask Proof. These are our best barrels. So everything we do is single barrel offerings. So we offer a Roundstone in 80, 92, and cask proof. In this cask proof, it is about 1 in 70 barrels selected to be this year. So truly those that we feel are the most perfect. It is Becky and the team who taste through every single barrel, and those that are soft, approachable go into our 80 proof, elevated spice characteristic go into 92. And those that they say, we can't do anything to it. We cannot adulterate these one bit, go into the cask proof. So let's start with the nose on this one. I'm not going to, because my virtual background, I start looking a little weird. I start disappearing. But as you start to nose this here, I think you'll be a little impressed, right? So rye obviously has that elevated spice characteristic, right? We spent a lot of time in that corn sweetness, but yeah, exactly, Rich, right? We spent a lot of time in that bourbon with that corn, that high corn mash bill, moving into that rye category. But for us, what we're really excited about is we use local rye. So all the rye that we use is from within 100 miles of our distillery. We have one farm in Pennsylvania, two in Virginia. So mid-Atlantic rye, which is going to be a little different from the Midwest and Canadian rye that kind of dominates the market. So, Chastity, you're getting those dates, right? We're a little bit warmer, a little bit softer. On the nose, you get dates, you get molasses, you get those, sort of softer tones for us. And so rye can be a lot of different things. Just terroir matters in spirits. We don't talk about it a lot, but terroir certainly matters. And so for us, those mid-Atlantic grains that we use give us a softer, more approachable. So let's give it a taste now. Hope everybody tries this. Now, you may be scared. Single barrel, 100% rye at cask proof might be scaring you off, but I don't think it's going to hit you quite as hard as you think. We don't chill filter anything on the line, which really, really helps here, right? Those fats and lipids really help carry that proof through your palate. So you get the warmth, but it's not just heat, right? You're getting a long lingering finish on it. Spice is going to be a little more warm spice, cinnamon and baking spice, as opposed to green pepper or black pepper. You're going to get that toffee, very familiar across that bourbon flavor profile, right? It's a really good transition into that space. And then that palate, just long, you get a little bit of chocolate, you get a little bit of clove, and that spice just continues to linger. This is the one of our portfolio that I like the best. It gets me in trouble because it doesn't drink like 116. So I have to be a little safe to watch what I'm drinking. But anybody have any thoughts on this one here? One thing I failed to mention, so we talk about wood, right? So we use 30-gallon New American oak. So either Minnesota or Virginia at a level 3 char. So, that smoothness, that's coming through using those smaller barrels, elevated, contact with that wood grain. Virginia, as much as I'm a Midwest guy, I'm based out of Chicago, I don't want to admit that Virginia gets winters, but they do get all 4 seasons, which really helps with that, getting the whiskey in and out of the wood. Our barreling process, so we're located downtown Purcellville, Virginia, which is about 45 minutes outside of downtown DC. Beautiful, small little town. We do offer tours, so please come on by. Scott and Becky are there all the time. Most often, they'll be the ones hosting the tours. But our aging warehouse is about 40 minutes further west into Virginia. So we're to the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, which really gives us great temperature changes, right? Even daily, that fog coming off those hills helps that whiskey move in and out of that wood so that we get that really smoothness. So now that you guys have had time to taste it, I'm going to let you know how old it is. I don't like to tell you till you've had a chance. It is only 2 years old in that wood.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I'm
those
surprised.
30-gallon barrels, right? It's David, I'm sorry you're not enjoying it. Obviously it's not for everybody. Hopefully maybe after a revisit after something else. Dave, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it in the past, but that those smaller barrels and that time really, it shows you. And rye is a grain that doesn't need as much time as corn to be fully rounded as well. But I like to share that after everybody's had a chance to try it, because we all have our perceptions there. But any other questions there?
I was going to say, I am delighted certainly at how easy it drinks at the proof, but also the warmth. This has that, what reminds me of some of my, it doesn't taste like a wheat whiskey, but what reminds me of some of my favorite wheat whiskeys is that cereal warmth, where I almost just feel like just like, yeah, it's like a warm blanket. It's wonderful. But that warmth comes through immediately. That cereal grain mash bill thing, you can tell it's grain, which actually says a lot about the product, because sometimes the oak can really mask the quality of the grain, and the grain is coming through here nice and
Yeah,
loud,
no,
which is
and
great.
that's a really good point as well, right? We use the same farmers every year. We want the grain to shine through, right? We use 100% organic rye, and we want that to show, right? We have some barrels we've kept for 4, 5, 6 years, and you get that tannic wood flavor. You lose that grain, and that could be anything. So that's a really good note.
Yeah, and I'm not sure who HD10 is, but they have had some interaction with Becky, it looks like. They say Becky's awesome. I always walk out with more than I plan. I get in trouble when I forget to bring some to the West Coast. I love it.
She is amazing. She is the hardest working person at the company. I've got the easy job. I just come out and tell her story. She's in the distillery every single day on board. She's amazing. And HD, we are available out in the West Coast as well. So hopefully you can find it. If you want to shoot me a note privately, I can share with you some places you can find it. But you can also use that promo code that we've got. If you go to buyvirginiarye.com and then use WowHome22A, you can get it shipped right to your door with 10% off.
I love it. Beautiful. Dean, thank you so much. Thanks for being with us. And HD says they live 23 miles from the tasting room. Well, there you go.
Oh, fantastic.
Down the street, really.
And thank you, Charles. Thank you so much.
Nice. Yeah, thanks, Charles. That's great too. So Charles is getting some caramel notes and some other layers with the water added as well. So again, you've got that dropper. I always say make sure you taste it neat first, just to get that kind of initial reaction, and then go nuts. You can try it all different ways afterwards. That's beautiful. Well, thanks, Dean. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Wonderful. Well, everyone, we are moving on to number 4. So let's get ready for 4. Cleanse that palate, get our 4th bottle ready. And we're still talking Virginia. And I always do a double take when I hear the word, because I think someone's talking to me. I'm like, yes. Virginia Distillery Company. And this is their Courage and Conviction American Single Malt. So go ahead and get your glass ready, get a little pour there. We're going to go back down in proof a little bit, but we're still going to be over the standard 40% ABV. We're at 46%. And this one, I still remember when I first had this one, when it first came out, I got a sample. I was just super impressed with this one. Kind of blown away right away. It's their Courage and Conviction, and it's American single malt. And again, I don't know how much all of you do dig into or enjoy American single malts, but as a whiskey lover, you probably know it has very much been a growing category, and one that has thrilled me because it doesn't have some of the specifications, let's say, that we have, the legislation we have for bourbon and rye. And that has been controversial. Some people are really pushing for a lot more legislation on American single malt, what it can be made from, how it can be aged. But the joy of the last decade is that there haven't been as many of those rules, so it can kind of be all over the place. And I would say this one here from Virginia Distillery really has been kind of one of the standard setters in American single malt, certainly over in that area. And the joy is that an American single malt can be very barley forward, as some of you Scotch and Irish whiskey and beyond fans might prefer. So it can be all malted barley. It can be a mix of things. But this distillery uses fresh spring water from the Blue Ridge Mountains. So they're kind of not far from there. So there's kind of that clean leanness that comes through from the water they use as well. And they kind of talk about they leverage their broad temperature shifts as well. And I assume they mean that in their aging. Their pots, they have copper pot stills from Scotland that they distill. But it is definitely, even though you'll see some of those barley, Scottish still kind of things, it is definitely an American single malt. It is a unique style and a whole different direction from Scotch or beyond. Right away, it has that gentleness though, like plenty of scotches. It comes on a little gentle to me right at the beginning with the fruit, the stone fruit and the honey is what I'm getting right on the nose. Yeah, Dave, exactly. It is a beautiful location to visit, says Dean. Yeah, there we go. Neighbors in Virginia. But Dave says too, yeah, white stone fruit, honey, lovely barley, exactly. And then I'm gonna dive in here on the palate. That stone fruit's there for sure. Actually, it makes me feel spring into summer vibes. I'm getting that, yeah, apricot and peach and almost peach pie, like not in a sweet way, but like a gentle spiced kind of way where I'm getting that. Yeah. Oh, and I see here now in the tasting notes, ginger grilled peaches. Yeah. Yeah. It honestly made me think of peach pie. There it was. But again, it's really elegant. This one has some really nice restraint. Reminds me of when I first tasted it. This one made me kind of stop in my tracks because I love American single malt, but I have tasted the gamut. Yeah, Dave, exactly. Caramelized peaches with cinnamon and brown sugar. That's it. You should do food pairings with these. Let's have some peach pie or just some caramelized peaches. That'd be great. Yeah, it's lovely. Any other thoughts or input from anyone on this one? We really actually have gone 4 very different styles here. So we're kind of blazing through a wide range, which I love. This is what whiskey's all about. Now, I know one other thing that's interesting, I think, about what they use for courage and conviction is they do use 3 different kinds of casks as well, which again, this is the freedom you have in American single malt. They use bourbon casks that formerly held Kentucky bourbon. So again, they're doing second fills, so that partly explains the gentleness a little bit, little less of that oak dominance, because it's not new oak. Not that it has to be that way with new oak, especially if it's aged more, but it can be. And then they also use sherry casks, Fino, Oloroso, Pedro Jimenez sherry casks, and then they use some cuvee casks from European red wine producers. So that's an important piece, I think, in the elements of flavor you're getting here as well, is you're getting wine, sherry, and bourbon cask. Oh, that's a lovely one. All right. Any thoughts, comments? Otherwise, we're gonna cross the waters and head over to France for a minute. And head on to number 5. And number 5 is our Brunet 10-year French single malt whiskey. So I'll give you a minute to kind of prep for that. I'll have my last sip of the Courage and Conviction. And we'll jump in. All right, get some water. And also please too, yes, I just did notice Whiskey's the World. Thank you for that. Don't forget to tag and share your experience on social media. We've got the hashtag wow them at home, all one word. And then follow us too. If you're not already, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. And the handles are there in the chat. All right. So for the Brunet single malt, this is the 10-year. And I remember when I first had this one as well years ago. There are a few producers I have tasted and enjoyed from France over the years, but not a lot. There's not a large volume. And this was one of the early ones that really impressed me. And of course, what you get in this one is kind of that French partnership. It's the first single malt in the world aged exclusively in French Limousin, oak, and cognac casks. And it is twice distilled in a copper alembic still, aged for a minimum of 6 years. Obviously, as 10-year, it would be 6 to 10 years then, in this case. And yeah, you'll see here, and this one, also the ABV is 48%. So just slightly more than our last one. You'll see here right away. And again, please jump in with your thoughts and impressions. This one's elegant and gentle in a totally different way. I mean, this one, I just go immediately to those. Yeah. Christine, I love this whiskey. It's just such a delight to sip. And I haven't even got to sipping yet, but I'm like that beautiful, gentle nose. It's so soft. It's like gentle fruits, like there's a little bit of tannins on the nose even, and slightly herbaceous. David says it's got that lovely note from the cognac that my brain translates as golden. Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely golden for sure. All right, I'm going to jump into taste, and join me if you haven't already. Okay. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's good to revisit this one. It's such a lovely one and just so different. And it's got those great cognac and sherry parallels there. But I have cognac's another region I have spent a lot of time in, and I love the distillery is so dearly there. I love what happens with grapes when they age. I've been privileged to taste some cognac back even to 1840s. And it's mind-blowing, and I can almost taste those vibes here, which is interesting because this is grain. But I'm tasting those notes of cognac that I get a lot, the pear and the pear and apple notes and that kind of gentleness, and it makes me feel like, oh, this could age like a cognac could just keep going. That's what happens often with a fruit brandy. It's amazing how long they can age. But yeah, let's Rich here too. Lovely. And French oak is not as forgiving as American oak, I hear, on spirits. The French just master the eats and drinks. Certainly. And it's a whole different type of oak as well. But it just, yeah, that elegance and restraint is there that you often see in cognac and Armagnac as well. And as some of you may know, a lot of whiskey lovers have become Armagnac lovers as well. I know a lot of people that are big collectors of both, because Armagnac's can be a little more rough and tumble than cognac. So a lot of whiskey lovers love and collect both, but I love all those fruit brandies from France and beyond. Yeah, Christine as well. This expression has a slightly different nose and palate from the bottle I had. Very nice, not as sweet. Oh, interesting. And Christine, I assume, do you have the 10-year as well, or do you have a different Brené? I'd be curious. Okay, interesting. Yeah, and this can happen, and especially sometimes with smaller production or slightly different blending from one year to the next. I still don't have my older bottles, or I'd compare as well. I love to do that. But I drank everything I had from last time. Well, that is lovely. And Rich saying the Glenmorangie 13-year in a cognac cask is worth finding if you like Brené. Absolutely. And Glenmorangie, oh my goodness, they are the epitome of elegance as well. And elegance in some of those dessert notes without being too sweet. Like there's so many Glenmorangie Scotch, I find you get those chocolate orange, very brulee, very dessert elements, but they do it with such a gentle hand. Yes, David as well saying Teeling has a few lovely cognac cask finishes too. Absolutely. Teeling is a great Irish whiskey. They have such a good range of experimentation in casks for sure. Beautiful. This is definitely my kind of crowd. Whiskey lovers. Spirits lovers across the board. All right, so let's jump into Charles. Well, actually, I'm gonna give Charles a shout out on this one too. I'm with you. I'm partial to gin, so a lot of the herbal notes from this are oddly reminiscent of some gins I've tried. I am a huge gin lover as well. That is my nickname, GIN. I've been called that my whole life, and I adore gin. And actually, herbaceous notes to me is one of my favorite things in food or drink. So I love when herbal notes come through, when you get mint or thyme or sage or any of those elements. And yeah, this definitely has a bit of that. I love aquavit too, because you get that, it's like the savory side of gin, those savory botanicals. All right, beautiful. Yes, right, David Stewart, Drumshambo gunpowder gin. That's a good one. It's a good one from Ireland, and Ireland and Scotland make just stellar gins. Scotland has for a long time, and Ireland has really stepped up the game the last decade. Some incredible gins. Yeah. Oh, spirits. It's an endless well. It's an endless well of joy. All right, so now we are going to go ahead and jump into sample number 6. We are definitely at the halfway point. And so this is Widow Jane 10-year bourbon. And we are going to New York City for this one. This is a New York, Brooklyn produced in Red Hook, which many of you know for beer historically. And we're going to jump in on that. Oh yes, I still love to see the gin comments. That's great. Dingle Gin too. Yep. Dingle Peninsula. There you go. Cheers. Shot. Yeah, beautiful. Oh, I'm ready to road trip in Ireland again. That sounds good. Let's go. All right. So Widow Jane here. We're going to jump in on this one. It is a 10-year, and it is exciting for me, as I've been covering and writing about some of this for a long time, to see some of these places get old enough now to have 10 years. Some of these American small craft producers, I remember when they first started, and 2 years is as old as you're going to get, and 4 years it's like we're ancient by now. And to start to see 10 years and more, this is when you're like, okay, the craft distilling movement is really growing up now. We're starting to see things move that direction. So that excites me. This is 45.5%. And as we said, Red Hook, Brooklyn is where we're headed for this. This is a bourbon. I don't know if I have the mash bill on this one. I don't think I do, although I'd be curious. Yeah, definitely that sweeter nose where it's very much vanilla cream. And yeah, rich caramel, as Ellen is saying, absolutely. You definitely get some of those barrel notes there. You can tell it's got some of that age on it. I do know, they're in Red Hook, they do also make rye whiskey as well. So there's a good chance this has some rye in it, and they're non-chill filtered. And they also use limestone water from Rosendale Mines in upstate New York. They're these legendary mines, so they have kind of a pure water source up there. They use non-GMO corn varietals. And yeah, and this is Widow Jane at 10 years. All right. Definitely, for me, this one's going more robust right away. I'm getting like a fuller boom. I'm getting the spice, which makes me think there's got to be some rye in this, and definitely those sweet orange, all those notes. Okay, Rich Miller says, "Oh boy, my first Widow Jane, darker color and the crispest mouthfeel." Yeah, definitely. It's robust and sweet without being cloying. Definitely like orange cherry, all that goodness. Any other thoughts with anyone on this one? Again, we're going opposite style of the last one. We're definitely cruising through the styles here. Something for everyone, I always say. When people tell me they don't like an entire category of whiskey, when they're like, well, I hate bourbon or I hate Scotch, I'm like, there's one for you. You just have to taste more and you'll find it, because there's such a wide array of styles. And especially the last 10 years, it's only become more so, with the distillery around every corner in some ways. Yeah, I remember we left Oklahoma when I was 1, but I was born in Oklahoma. And when I started to see small craft distillers pop up there, I'm like, well, it's everywhere now. It's officially mainstream. Every state and region has a distillery now. But anyway, all right, Rich to Widow Jane and Uncle Nearest are topping your list so far. Okay, great. And those are 2 really different styles. So yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you got the Tennessee whiskey and the 10-year bourbon, and yeah, that covers a wide gamut of flavor there already. All right, any other thoughts on this one? And then we're going to move on to, we actually are going to jump into Scotch now, which I'm not mad about. And actually, I'm so excited to have our next guest, and I'll go ahead and let you all, as we're prepping here, get your glass rinsed and get ready for that next round. Especially, definitely, I would have some water, because we are going to switch styles completely here. But I'm very excited to have Karen here with us, because she is an incredible entrepreneur and just an incredible entrepreneur for women and for Scotch. I remember she's a first generation Cuban American. And I remember just being very excited when I saw this woman is launching a Scotch, because there was just so little women in launching Scotches. There's still a short list, but I remember years ago just going, okay, now that's exciting. I'm already used to being one of the few women in the room sometimes over the years, and thankfully it's changing more and more all the time. But I'm just thrilled to see someone like Karen, who's been doing this for years already. But welcome, Karen, and tell us about Sia and how you started it, because I know you got a cool Kickstarter story.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thank you, Virginia, for that awesome introduction. And yeah, absolutely. I think when you say you're going to meet the founder of a Scotch brand, you're probably expecting an older white Scottish man, maybe wearing a kilt, but instead you've got me. I'm Cuban American. I grew up in Miami. I didn't grow up in a distilling family. I found my passion for Scotch later in life. I'll tell you some other unexpected things about Sia. We like to say that Sia is an unexpected blend for the modern palate and everything you'd never expect from a Scotch whiskey. So as I mentioned, I was a graphic designer before I started my brand, and was introduced to Scotch, in my early 20s, when a friend, similar to what you just said, Virginia, had told me, it sounds like you just haven't found your brand yet. He had invited me for a glass of Scotch after work, and I said, no, I don't drink whiskey and I don't drink Scotch. And he said, you just haven't found your one yet. Let me see if I can take you on a whiskey adventure. So that night, I instantly fell in love with many different spirits, but the one that caught my eye was Oban 14. It kind of unlocked everything for me, and I quickly became that annoying friend that was trying to convince everyone else to drink Scotch. By the time, everyone was drinking Cosmos or Red Bull soda, the Red Bull vodkas, and Scotch wasn't on the horizon yet. So I started getting pretty curious. I started going on distillery tours. I started visiting Scotland quite a bit. I started reading every book and magazine about whiskey I could get my hands on, became certified as a whiskey ambassador, and started hosting Scotch tasting events. So I could really learn how to change someone's mind when they say that they are not a Scotch drinker, or that Scotch is their grandfather's drink, or that it burns their nostrils or tastes like gasoline. So the embarrassing part of the story, I'll share with you all since we're friends. I was actually going through a breakup in my early 30s, and started realizing I had a little extra money every week I didn't need for couples counseling. So I started spending all my couples counseling money on Scotch. Next thing you know, I had about 300 bottles in my house, was cured from that relationship, and then started using these different whiskeys to do something I was reading a lot about, which was blending. Eventually I came up with this great blend. I thought, this is it. This is how I could introduce a whole new generation of Scotch to consumers. And then I was off to the races. So as I mentioned, I didn't have much money, so I crowdfunded Sia on Kickstarter, making it the first time any whiskey or Scotch was ever crowdfunded. This was back in 2012, when people didn't really know what crowdfunding was. And that made me, as far as I know, the first American woman in history to create a brand of Scotch, and also the first Hispanic person to do so as well. So off to the races. So you've got your Sia in front of you. The name Sia means 6 in Scottish Gaelic. I chose that name because there are 6 whiskeys in the blend. It could also stand for Scotch is awesome. If you raise your glasses, cheers. On the nose, this is again what you said, Virginia, about the nose being so important. I read somewhere that the nose is almost 80% of the taste experience. So if you get too many notes of smoke or peat on the nose, you may get turned off to it if you're new to the category, or as I like to say, Scotch curious. So what you mostly get on the nose is vanilla and caramel notes, no smoke at all. In the mid palate, I'll drink with you. You're going to get a little bit of citrus and honey. And then finally on the finish, you're going to get just a gentle hint of smoke, but it's not overly smoky. So the vanilla caramel notes invite people into the category. The smoke is there for people that are a little bit more familiar to it. The more specific bits to the blend that I'll share with you. So Sia is a blend of 4 regions of Scotland: Speyside, Highland, Islay, and Lowlands. It's a combination of first fill and refill ex-American oak casks, bourbon, The first fill imparts some of those more sweeter vanilla caramel notes. The refill casks bring out some of those distillery notes. It's a blend, and the distilleries have changed from time to time in order to make that consistency of flavor. The ones that we do like to share is Tianinic. It's a 200-year-old distillery from the Highlands region, and it helps bring out some of those citrus notes that you're tasting. I'm really proud, excuse me, of the blending team for Sia. This was an all-star dream team. I was literally shaking. So it's Jim Beveridge from Johnny Walker, Emma Walker, who's taking the reins over for Jim at Johnny Walker, and Craig Wallace, who's the master blender for Old Parr and Buchanan's. So just an amazing dream team. Some other parts to Sia that are pretty unique. We have a very high malt to grain ratio. So blends typically have about 20% malt whiskeys in the blend. We're using almost 40, making it, again, very smooth, easy drinking. And the awards that I like to share, I know we've got a lot of award-winning spirits here. So we received a 96-point rating from the Ultimate Spirits Challenge. This is one of the arguably harder spirit competitions out there, and the 96 points beat out several of our competitors, but it also even beat out Johnny Walker Blue, which is not bad for a whiskey that's under $40 on the shelf. We also received a double gold medal from the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. And finally, Whiskey Advocate magazine gave Sia its highest awarded blend in 2015. We have a huge charitable give back towards minority entrepreneurs. So know that with every bottle purchase, you're helping small business owners to start and run their own businesses. And finally, you can follow us at Sia Scotch Whiskey on Instagram and all social media.
I love it, Karen. Thank you. Everyone is really responding. Loved your story. And Ellen says, hooray to graphic designers who love Scotch. But yeah, great comments too. Christine says, this is amazing. My favorite story so far, or amazing fave so far, and great story. Yeah, it's beautiful. Rich says, Karen's origin story tops the event. So cool. Really shows the soul of the spirit. So beautiful. Yeah, it's yeah, and absolutely lovely, delicious. Yeah, I've guessed, Ellen. I guessed we had a fellow graphic designer or former, whichever the case may be. But yeah, definitely an amazing journey and amazing Scotch. I love to hear that story of how you started and where you took this. It's amazing. And like you said, Kickstarter before this was really a thing, you know, it wasn't every other person wasn't trying to start their business that way back then. So it was amazing. I remember when I first got the first sample of your Scotch, and I was like, this is incredible. So yeah, it's exciting to see where you've gone.
Thank you, Virginia. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, Charles too says, thanks for giving us this gift. More mild than some Scotches I've had, but absolutely delicious. Almost reminds me of a lemon meringue in a way with the vanilla and citrus. Yeah, it's got a lot of layers.
I love that. Yeah, sometimes I even call it the gateway Scotch.
Yeah.
May this one help you find your way towards many.
Yes, oh, amen to that. That's not true. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being with us. And if anyone has any other questions, jump in now, or we'll move on to number 8. But please, yeah, it's a treat to have you with us, Karen. Each of our people, to have Chastity and Dean with us as well. This has been a joy. All right. Oh, thanks, Chastity. She says she would definitely recommend this. Love it. Yeah, beautiful. All right. And an amazing example, once again, just like each of these stories, as we're hearing from Chastity and Dean as well, of women in whiskey. And this always makes me proud. It always makes me proud to see what women are doing in whiskey, because it's unique and it's trailblazing. Yeah, so it's exciting. And all of the styles we've tasted so far that have been women produced and involved are all such different styles of whiskey. Something for everybody. All right, so let us jump in on number 8. We are still going to firmly stay in the Scotch territory for the next 2. And actually, these next 2, and I am not just saying this, when I saw what our lineup was going to be, I was thrilled, because these are two of my favorite Scotches. I love to recommend people who are always asking for something that's not one of the most obvious brands. And I always jump straight to these going, you're going to get history, elegance, all the things here. And they're not going to necessarily be, you know, the most obvious mainstream brand. So GlenDronach 12-year, this is one of my faves. I love their 15 as well. I love basically everything they do. This is at 43%. And as David Stewart says, huge fan of Dr. Berry. Yes, that is right. Dr. Berry is one of those great women in whiskey. Rachel Berry has been just an incredible pioneer in whiskey for a while now. And her hashtag on Twitter is the Lady Blender, but she is a master blender and really knows what she's doing when it comes to blending whiskeys. And she does a few great brands, and this is one of them. So go ahead and give that a pour if you haven't. Start nosing. One of the things, oh, there it is. One of the things I love so much about their Scotch is it reminds me of when I first fell in love in my younger years with a Mortlach 16, back when there was a Mortlach 16. That brand has really changed now, and also costs far more. And I used to get it when I'd be over in the UK for like 40 pounds, and it was really affordable. And the Mortlach 16 was the first time I fell in love with sherry cask, because I think I had the misconception up till then that it was sweet, that somehow sherry cask whiskeys were sweet. I was young and uninformed. But when I first had that Mortlach 16, I was like, wait, it's meaty. And I was just interviewing some distillers in Scotland, and none of them would say they drank anything besides their own brand, except two. And both of them told me when I'm off hours, I drink Mortlach 16. And so I was like, well, I'm going to try that out. And that meatiness of that sherry cask, I just fell for. And when I first had GlenDronach, it reminded me of that Mortlach 16. I mean, there's kind of all that sherry meatiness and depth, and just all that goodness. You get the sweetness, you get all the fruit and the caramel and the toffee, but it's also got that meaty depth. There's something there that's a little more, I know dank isn't a pleasant descriptive word, but I mean it in a good way, something that tastes aged and rich and powerful. But yeah, I'm seeing here Rich is a fan of I love the GlenDronach 21-year. Yeah, the 21-year, absolutely. Parliament is one of my all-time faves when I can afford it, right? But the 12 is all day long. Exactly. That's the thing about the 12. This is fabulous for a more reasonable price. And David says too, yes, Rich. Yeah. Oh, see, I know. Well, you guys all know Dr. Berry's work then. She poured the 25 for you 2 years ago. Absolutely. Everything she does is great. But this one is a joy, and I'd love any tasting notes or thoughts anyone has on this one, because even though we're still talking Scotch, this is a different direction with some of that sherry cask. Yeah, like I said, for me, meatiness, but that may not sound like a pleasant descriptor to you. To me, I mean it in all the right ways. Mm. Mm. Oh, it's so good. Yeah, and some of those stewed fruits too. It's just stewed dark fruit. It's just a joy. And again, at the price point, it's a real joy. Because yeah, these days, so many things that I used to drink Highland Park 30-year on the regular, and it was so much cheaper 15 years ago. And friends and brand ambassadors and people I knew were just pouring it all the time, and now they can't even get it. So it's a harder road to hoe for. That's the only downside of having more fans of whiskey, right? Is the price increase. All right. Well, any other thoughts on that one? Otherwise, we're gonna jump on to another Scotch that I love, Benriach. And Benriach has so many good ones as well. And again, just under the radar enough that the price is still reasonable for Scotch, and you can get it. They did have a rebranding a couple of years ago, and they really kind of refreshed their bottles. They're very clean and modern, and yeah, back at that GlenDronach, I see Christine, you said a couple drops of water really released the fruit for you. That's great, all the fruits. But yeah, let's talk Benriach too, and then you'll see again, similar but totally different style. And same ABV. These are both 43%. But you'll see right away, this one's kind of more citrus forward, but also for me has that just tiniest touch of peat or smoke. It's the smoke is there, it's gentle, it's balanced, but it's there. It's kind of a black pepper note even. And that's all just from the nose. Yeah, this one's got a lot of layers. Another fabulous brand that I always find is kind of one of my all-time favorites. I love almost everything in the line. And again, I don't know. I'd love to hear if there are any peat fans or would-be peat fans in the crowd. But to me, this is one of those, like Karen was talking about, gateway for Scotch in general. This to me is a gateway for some peat, because it's just that tiniest touch, just enough to tantalize without overwhelming. It's not an ashtray. It's not any of those exciting. I can love some of those good ashtray Ardbeg good times as well, but this one is really, exactly. Chastity says, I'm not a peat fan, but it's not overpowering. Exactly. I think this one is such a great example of doing it gently and elegantly. David says, I had the smoky 12 and love it. The 10 is everything you expect in a single malt. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they have that was part of the rebranding, is they call the peaty ones now the smoky 12 year, and you'll get more peat on that, but this one still has that delicate approach. David says, Isla, burning Band-Aid and rotting kelp, no thanks. It can be, but not always. You do get that Band-Aid thing on some of them, but I do find age helps a lot. There's, this is just me personally. If I drink Lafroig 10 is the biggest selling one. If I drink the 10, for me, it's too much of that. But if I go older, 18 or older, on Lafroig, it's really elegant and you still get all that peat, but it mellows out. It's not as much of that Band-Aid approach. That can be some of the criticism sometimes of Isla, but I love Isla Scotch. Bowmore is one of my favorites. Bowmore 15-year darkest, just incredible. But yeah, again, Benriach, I think, just nails that subtle peat. Yeah, David Stewart says the Curiositas is still one of my favorite Benriachs. Absolutely. Chuck, I like your comment, Chuck. Seeing Band-Aids and tar on tasting notes worried me the first time, but it works somehow. It's true. It can work beautifully. Yeah. Rich, look at peat as the carrier for the other flavors, even the Ardbegs and Lafroig. It's true. And I'm a huge Ardbeg fan too, as well. Like I said, there's a time for intense peat, and it's true. It can amplify other flavors. I tend to really love some of who does the Kewpie? I'm like spacing out now all of a sudden, or where they do like the oyster editions and things like that, and they're peaty. And so you get exactly as Rich, you're already tracking with me, Rich. Raw oysters is magic, and raw oysters and this marriage in heaven. But it can be in some of those peaty scotches as well. They get those oyster flavors or really bring that out. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, anyone else feel like they like or really don't like this? Is the peat a turnoff, or is it approachable enough that you're working with it? It looks like we had a couple people that agreed with Chastity on that one, Christine as well, that I normally don't like the peat, but this is not bad. Yeah, they just do a lovely job. Nice. Rich says, love it. A good intro to peat. Absolutely. And Ginny, I did notice there was another Ginny there. I was wondering if you were a fellow Virginia. But anyway, Ginny says, husband loves, wife hates, LOL. Well, hi to a fellow Virginia. I don't need too many. So yeah, well, that's okay. You can hate it too. We don't have to love them all. But I did find, there's a lot of things I've hated that when I was younger, I hated anything anise or licorice flavor. And when I early got into cocktails and spirits, I'm like, I have to love absinthe and I have to love all the anise spirits, and I'm going to have to come around. And this was over 15 years ago. And when I came around, I fell hard. And now it's one of my favorite flavors, but I used to think it was absolutely disgusting when I was a girl growing up. But absinthe converted me, I say. So there we go. Yeah. Rich is right. Peat takes time to like, but if you like pit barbecue or slow and low portions with the heat for 10 to 12 hours, you'll like peat. Yeah, I'm actually absolutely a huge barbecue fan, and love char and all that. But so I loved peat immediately, but it can definitely be an acquired taste. And I think Benriach is the right way to do it. All right. Well, I can't believe we're getting in on the home stretch here. And I appreciate your comments and interaction. That the peat discussion spurred some good discussion. Oh yeah, just to say on that last one, that's one of the things I love with that, even that Benriach 10-year is I've seen it for, I'm not sure what price there is, this one is listed for now, but I've seen it, anywhere around that like 60-ish price range. And it's just such a great quality for that. And it's just another one of those I recommend to people when I say, they can't spend a fortune, but they want a really good Scotch. I'm like Benriach, Glendronach, all of those. And of course, as Karen was saying, you really cannot beat her price point at all. If it's under $40, that's like a miracle. That's a miracle in Scotch, period. Yeah, so it's hard to come by. But yeah, in this case, as a 10-year or a 12-year, you're really getting value for these. All right. So home stretch. All right, let's do that last rinse. Take a deep breath. And we are going a different direction again. In fact, we are coming full circle, going back to where we began, to Tennessee. Full circle, and we're going to George Dickel, a little brand you might have heard of in Tennessee. And in Coffee County, it's where it's produced, no less. This is a big brand that is owned by Diageo that also I do know many distilleries around the world, including some of the agave, tequila producers and things I work with down in Mexico. They often use George Dickel casks or, of course, Jack Daniels, that type of things. So Tennessee casks often make it around the globe in some of our spirits. Rich says, I can hear full circle right now, Tennessee Jed by the Grateful Dead. Yeah, there we go. Oh, and Chuck, kudos on the Kilkeegan single malt. I was literally just introducing my neighbors to that yesterday. It is a fabulous, balanced, smoky barbecue-esque single malt, American single malt from Santa Fe. And it's also really elegant and well done. But they're not using peat. It's a little bit different. So it's beautiful. All right, but George Dickel, let's jump in. We have got the 15-year, so that's a nice treat. This isn't always the one you have every day. And just did my little rinse here. So we're gonna go ahead and pour the 15-year here. And yeah, this is gonna take us a totally different direction again. So we're gonna jump right in and see. Oh, Charles, as far as the nose, it's nauseating in a good way, if that makes sense. Peated scotches are confusing like that. Oh, and you might be talking about, I'm not sure if you're talking about the Dickel on that. Oh, the Kilkeegan. Okay, I see here. Yeah, great. There's a good discussion going on about trying the Kilkeegan and getting into that smoky mesquite side of things. But with the George Dickel here, we're jumping back up in proof again. So we're going to go 52.3%. And right away on the nose, I can already tell, again, this is a very balanced 52.3%. It smells elegant. It's not hot at all. In fact, I get, the baking spices and that golden warmth a little bit. Again, definitely some orange. But this one comes on just really gentle again for a 52, or we might just be deep into this at this point, but where it's all tasting nice and easy. But we've had a really balanced round. All 10 of these have been balanced. Nothing has been a hard hitting, as I often sit there in my blind judging notes and go, hot and tannic, too hot and tannic, too hot and tannic. It often happens. Not a single one here, all balanced. I see Charles. Yeah, thanks. That was about the Benriach. Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So so on this one, absolutely. Chuck is saying baking spices and peanuts. Yeah, there is absolutely that nutty note. Mm. And on the palate, it's still nutty and toasty, but it's that richer, deeper, like pumpkin bread, or the spices are coming through, all that. Oh, I see here in the tasting notes, the pecan pralines, getting that kind of thing. Yeah, absolutely. And it's got a nice robustness to it, again, without feeling hot. Like it really finishes big, but it's not hot, overwhelming, or too tannic. And for that 15 year as well, kind of rounds out that sweetness with the oak there. Yeah, any thoughts? Yeah, Rich says takes me to the south. I love it, definitely. Yeah, this one I could really picture after dinner. It's definitely got that, I could pair it with dessert kind of situation. Ellen says smells great, but I find the taste a little harsh. Yeah, it's definitely hotter than what we've been doing. I think, I mean, we just came from Scotch, so this is a little bit of a complete switch around here. And Scotch can often be, again, we're talking, you know, usually at least second fill casks there, so it's often more gentle and elegant. And here, you know, we're talking straight into a more robust American whiskey. So we really switched styles here, but I do think for the proof, it's really balanced, but it's definitely a lot bigger than where we just came from. It's a little harder. Okay, so now I'd love to hear any favorites or any comments or thoughts now that you've gone through the line. I'm really curious, and questions. This is a good time for questions or anything else you want to discuss in whiskey. Yeah, I'd love to hear any thoughts on all of the above. All right, Ellen says favorite Uncle Nearest, second favorite Benriach. Okay, so you've got an American whiskey and a Scotch in there. You're feeling all the directions. I love it. Anyone else have some thoughts on what they're still thinking about? David Stewart says, I've had Brene before and didn't love it. Now I do. And Sia is a great new discovery. Absolutely. Christine says faves are Sia, Glendronach, and George. I think, yeah, sorry. George Dickel. I'm used to calling it Dickel. So I was like, which one's George? Dickel for sure. Yeah, and then Rich says, of all the whiskeys, the Sia took me on a fun adventure from nose to finish. Absolutely. We're across the board here. Oh, Ginny, if you mean you as in me, then that is the sweetest thing ever. Or maybe you just typed you. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Chastity as well. Definitely have some new favorites: Bardstown, Catoctin Creek, and Sia. Ginny, yeah. Ginny says Uncle Nearest and Widow Jane, and her husband's feeling the Brene 10 and the Benriach. Yeah, you covered the spectrum there in your household. That's good as well. The American, the French, and the Scotch. Oh yeah, there you go, Chuck. You've been looking for that Brene. Well, I'm sure you can get it through Whiskeys of the World. I'm sure we can get all of these. So yeah, definitely go there, because yeah, you don't want to be without one. I love that one too so much. Yeah, Christine says Brene is always a fave, and so is Courage and Conviction. So I'm not counting it in my faves. Oh, and Jane too. Love Jane. Rich, you bring up a nice, important discussion for women in whiskey, and I'd welcome I'd welcome Chastity or Karen to jump in too if you want to talk about this. I certainly have thoughts. Rich says, Virginia, I've heard through various whiskey forums that women have the more expert nosings and taste descriptors. Do you think this is true or just some paternal kind of comment? I think all can do it, but you're a pro and have been around. Thoughts? I cannot say, just because I'm nosing and tasting through my own experience and expertise, which I absolutely think is honed. I think taste is learned. I do not think it is subjective. I think it is absolutely learned and can be developed. So that is true. Anyone can do it. I have heard some actual science and food scientists say that women do have generally have a heightened sense of smell and taste, that there is something that does have to do with the maternal ability. That's something, I'm not sure if that's a danger sense with smell or things like that. They say that we actually do tend to be heightened. Of course, as the issue with anything, that is not going to be true of every woman, nor is it going to be true of every single man, that it wouldn't be as heightened. So I think nothing is 100%, but I have heard that more from a scientific, factual side, that women do have heightened nosing and tasting abilities. And I think it is something about testing and making sure things are safe for our babies. So I have heard that.
Yeah, I've heard that before too.
Yeah.
I've heard it before too, but I can say from experience that I think everyone is trainable.
Yes.
Thinking back in the 20s, I was drinking vodka. I wouldn't dare touch vodka now. It's so many other great things to drink. And my palate has matured over the years from tasting so many different things, that everyone's palate is trainable. So that might be a scientific fact. Who knows? But hey.
I have asked some, even, if you know the great Harold McGee, who's here in the Bay Area. He's an incredible food scientist, and he's written textbooks on this type of thing. And I've straight up asked him some of these questions, and that was one of the things he said as well about palate as well. I asked him, I said, is it true that you can train your palate, scientifically true? And he said yes. And he gave me this was when I was the editor of Zagat years back. He gave me the greatest quote. He said, no taste is learned or is inherent except mother's milk. Everything else is learned. So, you can learn to like anything and learn to, because I wrote an article for Zagat during those years where I said, I have trained myself to like things I hate. And I believe anyone can do that. So yeah. And he confirmed that scientifically.
Very true.
Yeah. He confirmed it from that point.
For instance, I hated red wine years ago until I took a wine class and I was introduced to red wine through food.
Yes.
And that way I was able to appreciate it and then be able to enjoy it without food the more I drank it. So I definitely trained my palate to enjoy red wine and scotch.
Absolutely. And so many things I hated, from mushrooms on, I've trained myself to like, and to like or love. But I always say, I think it's true of absolutely everything. There are amazing versions of everything and terrible versions of everything. And even vodka, which would be personally for me my least favorite spirit, just because of the neutrality factor. Sometimes neutrality isn't always the best flavor. But I have had mind-blowing vodkas, and when I judge them, I give them golds all the time, because I can taste, nose, and smell an excellent made one versus a poor quality. So it's true of anything, even my least favorite thing. There are beautiful versions of all of it. It's all excellence, knows boundaries. Yeah.
Definitely agree with the vodka.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can appreciate what it goes to.
Yeah. But the world of spirits is just so exciting and crazy. It's too hard for me to spend a lot of time there when there's so many crazy things to taste. From aquavit to eau de vie. I'm like, why do we? Yeah, there's a good discussion going on. Let's see. Faith says, Chastity, we heard a podcast, NPR, How I Built This, about your founder for Uncle Nearest. Amazing story. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, that was an amazing story. When I listened to it, I actually learned some things about her that I didn't know. So I enjoyed that podcast too. If you all haven't, if anyone here hasn't listened to it, I urge you to go and listen to her podcast on NPR.
Yeah. And just Google that, NPR, How I Built This, Uncle Nearest, and I'm sure it'll come right up. Yeah. Oh, well, this is wonderful. It was what a great group. Definitely, clearly a lot of spirits lovers here across the board. from gin to whiskey. All right. So yes. So important reminder, that Whiskeys of the World is posted. Don't forget, we also have the special offer for While Them at Home attendees tonight. The promo code 15% off the World Whiskey Day. And yeah, that's all there. Please, and stay tuned on the site. Like I said, come see us in person at an event. And Rich says, hope to see you at the live event, Boston, August 2022. Beautiful. Yes, and we will also send out a survey. We'd love your thoughts after this. So please stay tuned on that. We'd love to have you for more virtual experiences as well. We'll do more of these. And as you know, there's a different lineup every time. And we could just keep going. There's so many styles and ranges around the world and around the US to just keep going here. So yeah, and love those final comments. Yeah, Charles too, talking about some more favorites as well. I hear you. Yeah, and DC in June. That's right. DC in June's coming up first. So yeah, but thank you. You've all been amazing. Thanks to Dean and to Karen and to Chastity. You're just incredible. It's just a joy to have each of your whiskeys represented here. So thank you. And thanks, Doug and the Whiskeys of the World team. Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you next time. Yeah. Thank you.